Hello, welcome to the HR Strategy in the Hot Seat podcast. My name's Anwen Bottois, I'm your host, and I'm the founder of Purple Sky Consulting. I'm a leadership promotion specialist, and I also have a bit of a side hustle where I focus on development of HR leaders. So as the title of the podcast suggests, this is going to be all about HR strategy and how we can help HR professionals to consider the strategic elements of HR in more depth. Now let's get started with this episode. Sean, you are very, very welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me on. I'm super excited to have a bit of a natter. So yeah, thank you.
So Sean and I have spoken before. So it's always nice when I'm podcasting with people I have met before. I've got a couple of people coming up soon that I've never met, like properly or had a long conversation with before. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the different dynamic that brings in. But as we've met, why don't you share a little bit with our audience about who you are and what you do?
Cool. Yeah, no problem. So I'm Sean Spurgin. I'm Learning Director at Elev-8 Performance. So we're a training consultancy business. I suppose the short answer is what we do is we across lots of different propositions, leadership development, management development. But I suppose the key essence of what we do is we look to change behaviour in organisations and deliver better results. So we're not just a off-the-shelf training provider. What we do is we bespoke our solutions to the need of our clients that we work with. We tend to work with clients like BT, Police Scotland, some armed forces, real range of clients. But yeah, so we've been established for about 6 years and born out of another business called Blue Sky Performance Improvement. Some people might remember them, but yeah, we've been going 6 years now. So.
Yeah, there's a good chance we were in the same room at the same time when you were at that with the Blue Sky business, because I was at British Gas when that organisation was delivering for us. So we might not have met each other properly before, but we might have been in the same space.
We quite possibly have. It's a small world, and we still work with Centrica and British Gas. So yeah, one of our favourite.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, it's a little while since I left them, but yeah, lovely. I'm glad you're still working with them. That's fantastic. So why don't you tell us a little bit more then about your background in terms of like, how is it you got into this learning space and the development space, and maybe why you love the leadership stuff?
Do you know what? So my early career was in business. So I've sort of been a leader, and I've led large teams of over 1,000 people. I have the battle scars and the grey hairs to show for that. So I started out sort of in business, and then I took a break in my mid-20s because through a bit of soul searching. Long story short, what I was looking for was I knew what was important to me was learning, personal growth, and sort of that continual learning was very important to me. So I went off and did a teacher training course. So I qualified secondary school teacher for my sins.
Awesome.
In geography. Yeah, I did that for a couple of years. Decided it wasn't quite right for me. So I went back into business and did various things in terms of leading teams operationally, both in retail settings and in also call center settings. But I also worked within HR teams doing various things as well. So, and again, sort of in my mid-30s, I did a bit more soul searching and thought I'm not getting the fulfillment I need from the roles that I was doing. I love working with people. I love the growth aspect of helping others grow. I love the personal growth for myself. So I did that soul searching, and long story short, again, I ended up targeting Blue Sky as an organisation I wanted to work with because they'd done some work with us. It was game changing. It delivered different results, etc. So I ended up working with them, and that's the rest is history. So I've spent the last 20 years consulting, working in this space. And I suppose what I love about it is that you get the opportunity to, and it sounds really cheesy, but really have the opportunity and a privilege really to help others grow on an individual sort of level, but also you have the opportunity to help teams grow and help cultures change as well. And that is a real privilege. And we're able to see those tangible results when we're working with clients like Centrica, like EE and others, and really make a difference. And that's what I'm all about, is trying to help others be the best versions of themselves, but also help teams perform better as well. And I really get a kick out of that, which I know it sounds a little bit cheesy.
It's not cheesy at all. I think if you probably speak to most people in that leadership development space, especially those working for themselves now as well, I think you'd hear similar answers. I don't think mine is much different really in terms of it's such a difficult job leading, but it doesn't have to be, and it can be an absolute joy. And I think if you can help people to find the joy in it and for it not to be difficult, challenging, sure, but not difficult anymore, then that's awesome, isn't it?
100%. And I think part of the challenge is, like myself, if I look at how I became a leader, I would describe it as the magic weekend. We talk about that. And so on a Friday, I got told you're great at your job. And on a Monday, Sean, we want you leading 20 people. No preparation, no development. I had some really challenging characters in that team, and I had to learn on the job, and I made a lot of mistakes. And it wasn't probably 5 to 10 years into my career before I started getting that sort of development I probably needed early on. So you can imagine how many mistakes I made. But that accidental leadership is we see a lot in organizations, and that's another reason I love doing what we do, because you have the opportunity to support people, develop themselves, but also you're helping others. So yeah, it's a definite privilege to do what we do.
Yeah, it's absolutely love that. So we're going to talk HR strategy.
Yeah.
And what is it you'd like to put in the hot seat?
I'd love to put in a hot seat team climate, which is the basis of our book that we published at the back end of last year. And the concept is all about how, there's lots been written on culture change and how you drive a difference in culture. And many people have seen the stats that, 70% of culture changes fail, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a belief that culture is probably a bit like the personality of an organization, quite fixed and quite difficult to change. Not impossible, but difficult to change. But we liken team climate, which is more like the mood, the day-to-day experience of what people experience in their teams with their direct leaders. And that is easier to change. So if you can change the team climate and you change several team climates around those people, actually that sends a ripple effect across the culture. So that's the premise of the book. There's a lot more to it. And we're not saying culture is not a thing and that you don't still work on that, but actually if you really want to make a difference, start working on those teams and change the climate that people operate in day to day, and you'll get better results, better engaged people, etc.
I've worked in organizations and functions where you could be in the same culture, same environment, but you have a different manager and your experience is very different to the person who's just the other side of the building to you.
100%. We call it, we liken that to the leadership lottery. So it depends on your leader. And unfortunately, that is very true in lots of companies that are out there. But the good news is that you can change that team climate very easily by, how that leader shows up and how they behave, etc. And that's a lot easier than trying to change the whole organization in one go. But there is other systemic things that we talk about. So there's things that drive human behavior, the reward systems, your pay, your benefits, the processes that sit around you. We're not saying that you don't still work on those things, because that you have to clear the path and reduce the friction in organizations to make it easier. So for example, if you reward people in a certain way and that drives a behavior, you could introduce training over here and people love the training, but they won't change their behavior because they're getting rewarded in a different way. So what we're not saying is you don't have to work on some of those systemic things within the culture, but actually, if you really focus in on those leaders at a team climate level, you can make a big difference.
So let's dig into that a little bit more, because what I love about the connection you're making there is that you can, and this is something I talk about with my clients, my coaching clients, you have a lot of control as a leader on that climate, on the day-to-day experience.
100%.
So that's what the premise of the book is about, really, isn't it? Is around an element of that. So what is it that you found that gets in the way of a leader taking that ownership over the level of control they actually have?
I think that's so one of the central parts of the book is we talk about three things: mindset, climate, and capability. And the fourth thing's friction, which I already mentioned. And it's really the mindset shift that we start with around exactly that. How do leaders show up and how do they think? And trying to shift that. And we talk about lots of different mindsets, but things like curiosity, learning agility, bravery, presence, etc. But really working with leaders to shift how they think about what is in their circle of influence versus what's in their circle of control, and how can they start to take responsibility. So you really have to take them on a journey around self-awareness, and they have to make a conscious choice and a conscious change around that. But that is the starting place. But also shrinking a change. If you say to leaders, you've got to go and change the culture out there. That's a big ask. Whereas if you're saying to them, right, what we want you to be able to do is change that climate that your people operate in, and there's 8 or 9 things that we want you to do. That's a lot simpler, because that's what we will also say, that often a lot of leadership programs are brilliant, but they focus on theory and etc. And whereas we're very tangible. We say, do these 8 things, and actually what will happen is your people will start to perform better and feel more engaged. And they're very simple everyday behaviors that leaders can display and start implementing straight away. So it's also about shrinking that change for them so that they don't feel, right, this is a massive task ahead of me.
I think that's such an important point around that they can't control some of that bigger stuff, but they can control or influence the things that you're referring to. So those immediate things they can put into practice. Are there a couple of examples, or you're happy to talk through all of them? What would you like to do?
Yeah, no, I think there's some really easy ones that leaders can go away if they're listening right now. And they might sound obvious, but they can make a huge difference. So we talk about Illuminate and Awesome, which is catching people doing things right. So encouraging the behaviors you want to see show up. Because if you think about a team climate or even the overall culture, leaders get what they celebrate and they get what they tolerate. So from a behavioral perspective, and if you want to see more of the good stuff showing up, you have to encourage people and praise them and praise progress, because often people wait for the goal to be completed and forget, let's praise and not mindlessly cheerlead along the way, but praise people for the progress that they're making.
It's like being at a football match and not celebrating any of the goals, but only celebrating if you get the result at the end, isn't it?
100%. And how many people do you speak to that probably have one-to-one at the end of the year, and then there's that awkward conversation around how they performed? And we're a big one to say, let's have that continual performance conversation, but focused on catching people doing what's right. What we're not saying is you don't steer into the chopsy stuff. So where there is underperformance or poor behavior, that also needs to be addressed. Brené Brown talks about clear to be kind, and we're big believers in that. You've got to balance this out in terms of, let's encourage the good stuff to show up, but also steer into that stuff where performance is dropping or behavior standards are not where they need to be. So I suppose that's one example. Another example is psychological safety or trust within a local team climate. That's in a leader's immediate gift to create that psychological safety for their team. Now, loads of people have heard that word before. They'll intellectually get it, that yes, I can see the benefits from creating it, but there is everyday behaviors that leaders can do to create that safety for their people. So really simple stuff, like when someone makes a mistake, rather than chastise and blame someone for it, let's use that as a learning opportunity. Another, leaders spend 50% of their time probably in meetings. So when you're in a meeting environment, encouraging the quiet people to participate, encouraging contribution, praising people for their contribution. It could be as simple as you're in a meeting and someone's made a point and you want to get your point across, and just acknowledging and saying that was a great point, and I just love to build on that. And what those simple behaviors do is just says to everyone else in the room, oh, great, someone's listening to me, someone cares about my contribution, therefore I feel safe to speak up. these aren't big, grand gestures. It's not, I mean, it is based on theory and psychology, but they're things that leaders can just do to make people feel, do you know what, on that Monday morning, the Monday morning when they get into work, do you know what, they haven't got that Sunday night dread. They're thinking, yeah, I feel good and my leader's got me. And it's really easy things to do.
It's the moments, isn't it? It's those little moments that are about everyday behavior rather than the grand gestures, isn't it?
100%. Yeah. And another thing we talk about is role modeling what the behaviors you want to see. So again, it sounds really straightforward, but if you're a leader that says, I believe that development is really important, and they don't see you developing yourself and not learning yourself, what message are you sending out to the team? So again, not rocket science, but really powerful things that leaders that are in their circle of influence. There's things that they can do immediately and start to change and work on.
Fantastic. So what are you seeing that organizations aren't getting right? Because what we know is not everybody experiences a positive climate to work in.
I mean, there's so many things. Where do you start? In terms of, I think if you look at leadership development as an example, I think a lot of organisations, unfortunately, underinvest in that aspect. They don't make the correlation between the return on investment from investing in leaders, because sometimes organisations find it hard to prove that. I mean, we're pretty good at doing that, but and I know you are too. But I think there's a lack of investment in leaders, and what that means is, and where there is investment, you get a sheep dip approach. So people are sheep dipped in a training course, for example, maybe on inclusion or how to tell better stories. It's not then embedded in the workplace. People aren't coached around how to use the tools that they may have learned in a workshop, for example, and therefore they don't see the change that's needed. So I think that's one reason why these things happen. I think going back to some of the systemic things, there's other things that organizations don't change around the system. So it could be, I mentioned a reward system earlier on, or it could be the pay and benefits. It could be communication. It could be your management practices. It could be your process and your systems. Those things get in the way of how people behave at work. And they're less in people's immediate control, but they're important as well. Lots of other things, but
yeah, and I think there are all those elements that HR leaders can be looking at in terms of the broader piece. Because I think my personal experience, so drawing on my experience, and I don't know how you found this, as a leader who did try and focus on creating a positive climate for my team, I maybe worked in an environment where the culture just didn't support that approach. And not because I didn't support it, but it wasn't necessarily becoming that elsewhere either. And some of the challenge for that was, for me as a leader, I then got to a point where I'm like, I can't really do this anymore myself. So I think you can find a situation where you might support leaders that do create that space to develop the climate. But if you don't take control of the systematic stuff, you will then see turnover in those great leaders maybe you are bringing in to shift the climate element. Does that make sense?
It does, totally, yeah. And that's why I'm saying you need to work at both. You need to work at the culture level, but also the climate level as well. So the climate's the mood, as we said at the start, and the culture is the personality. Harder to change, but you need to work at both. And I think HR leaders have a big responsibility to do that. And I think HR leaders also have a responsibility to demonstrate the impact of learning, for example, that learning can have on a culture if it's done well and it's done in the right way and it's embedded within the workplace as well. So I think that's part of the problem. A lot of learning, it has got a bad name, whether it be e-learning, for example, that's, tarnished the reputation, or whether bad previous experiences. And I think a lot of HR teams need to better demonstrate to the finance guys, to the board, that actually this is a worthwhile investment, and it drives, we all know employee engagement drives better customer experience and better performance. So investing in those leaders is a no-brainer, but actually you as a HR leader, you've got to better demonstrate that. And I think a lot fall short of that.
Yeah, and I think the really demonstrating the strategic value of the investment makes a huge difference on then being able to have more of it at another point or more regularly. Whereas sometimes there is a sign off for a big investment. We do the sheep dip
Yeah.
and then we actually don't really see the results because we've done too much, too broad, and it doesn't implement in a way that's useful. So if you were trying to get that case across with a HR leader when they're developing their HR strategy, what elements would you be getting them to think about to really influence the development of team climate?
If you want to influence that team climate, it's that investment and development in those frontline leaders and the middle management, but also the senior leaders, and doing it in a way that is going to have a lasting impact.
Yeah.
So to avoid that sheep dip, it's really look at how we would go about it is really looking at diagnosing what's the current gaps in capability, what's the current gaps in the sort of I was talking about the systems and processes that are driving behavior as well. Doing that diagnostic work before you look at any learning solution, because sometimes learning is not what's needed. It could be a different problem and it's important. But if learning and development leaders is, which often is the case, is making sure you're diagnosing the problem, but also that allows you to design a solution to meet people where they're at and actually developing something that's going to be really meaningful for those leaders. So when they step in the room, it's not some theory or psychobabble. It's actually useful, pragmatic learning that's going to make a difference immediately to them. And then the other thing is, I think, which often gets missed within learning interventions is the embedding of learning back in the workplace. And what I'm not talking about is e-learning or digital resources. They have the part to play, but actually coaching people back in the workplace to apply the skills, supporting them when it gets tough, giving them mechanisms to come back together to collaborate in a way that's in a peer-to-peer learning. Also, underpinning all that, you need to have a really strong communication sort of process around any development you're doing. You need to be demonstrating all the way through, which we were massive on. What movement are we seeing in the numbers? What movement are we seeing in people's engagement, etc., and actually measuring that from the very beginning, so that when you get to the end, you can demonstrate back to the board that that investment that you laid out at the start was worthwhile, not just one-fold, but maybe tenfold in terms of return on investment. So I think that's my advice, is really slowing down too fast and making sure that you invest in the right way and don't just, as I say, sheep dip people into, here's 3 workshops and all of a sudden you're going to be a better leader. It just doesn't happen. And leaders are effectively the conduit of delivering a great HR strategy.
Absolutely. And we are absolutely on the same page when it comes to the prioritizing what really matters, what's really going to make a difference, because that's how you get leaders actually excited and interested in the learning experience and feeling the value of that investment in them, because it has felt relevant.
Yeah.
It has felt useful. They can see that they're supported to put that into place, and then they go, oh yeah, that's the value I felt from doing that slightly differently. Oh, okay, can I have more, please?
100%. Yeah. And again, it's not rocket science, but I think that's where HR have a big opportunity. And often sometimes L&D teams sit separate to HR and they work together. But I think it's one big area. If you want to push a lever to get better performance in your organization, that is probably one of the key levers that you can put to do that, through your leaders.
I love that part of the conversation because that's a hot topic for me. I love this. I could talk about this all bloody day.
I get on my soapbox on these things. So yeah, no, 100%.
And I get it. I get the pressures in the HR team, because if you're handed, as part of a reorganization transformation project, a budget to do something, we then look at it and then we go, yeah, we know all these 35, 40 things we really need to fix with our leaders. And the temptation to try and do all of it, I totally understand, because you might not get the opportunity, or you might worry you're not going to get the opportunity to have that type of funding for a while. But hold your nerve is my advice. I don't know what you think.
Oh, yeah. And again, slow down to go fast. If you've got an investment, do that diagnostic work to really understand where you can have the biggest impact. Because often, investing in maybe in high post, for example, might sound great, and it's a great thing to do. But actually, the biggest impact you might have in an organization is investing in your sales leaders right now, because your pipeline or your growth isn't where it needs to be. So it's also investing in the areas where it's most needed if your budget is tight, but also diagnosing the right problem. If you just throw a load of generic leadership training at people, it's probably not what they need. Unless there's more. Again, sometimes people just need help to have better conversations. And it's simple as that. How do I steer into the choppy stuff? How do I have those coaching conversations? Just focusing on less is sometimes better. So
yeah, absolutely. So what do you see as the real benefits that organizations will get as a result of really shifting the dial on that climate piece?
It's huge benefits. We've seen it working with one client at the moment. They won't mind me saying, Bupa, for example, where we're focusing on we initially focusing on a pilot number of teams, and we tracked the measurement all the way through that, and they saw uplifts in performance in NPS. They saw productivity measures becoming better, complaints going down, the cost of complaints obviously decreasing as well. If you think about balanced scorecard, they also saw their engagement go up, which was already very high. So their people were happier, they were more productive, there was less sick hours, there was less turnover and attrition, and we're talking significant numbers. And what that's now doing is they're rolling that program out across sort of 5,000 people, and it's been done by champions within the organisation. So it's and also an opportunity for others to develop themselves to become facilitators to roll the program out. So, that's an example of it. Tangibly, that investment has demonstrated across a balanced scorecard real movement in KPIs. So, but again, it's knowing how to track that, and you have to start with that in mind at the beginning of any intervention that you do, and also things like control groups tracking, so that you can prove the impact that you're having over here is not because of something happening over here, which is something we really focus on.
Yeah. And it is challenging to get the metrics piece right and to do that. But you do have to start by understanding where you're trying to get to, because that ultimately makes it a lot easier when you are deciding if it's had an impact or not.
Yeah, and a lot of HR teams and learning teams don't measure enough, and therefore, when it comes back to that budget again, you can't demonstrate. Well, here's the case study of like what we did with this certain program. This is the impact it had. This is the ROI or return on energy. This is the movement that we've seen in people in terms of career, because there's other metrics like career progression. Not just reduction in attrition, etc. So you can demonstrate it if you know what you're looking for, and you can isolate it and do it in the right way. But that really helps HR teams when you want to go for that budget next year, and you're talking to the FD. By being able to demonstrate the impact you've had is so critical, and it's a massive miss in a lots of organisations, from what I think.
Yeah, but it's relatively simple when it's paid attention to. You don't have to have 50,000 metrics in there. If in fact, one or two, that'll do. But why does it matter for those metrics is the bit that matters there, isn't there?
And if you sit in front of the CEO and you say 99% of our delegates had a great time, a great experience on the happy sheets, that's not it. Part of it, but that's not driving performance in an organisation. So, if HR teams want to demonstrate their impact that they can have, they need to better do that bit really well. Not just do the learning bit well, but also demonstrate through performance uplift what the impact they're having. And I see that missing in lots of teams, unfortunately.
Thank you for sharing those bits. I think that's really great. One final question for you, and we might have covered this a little bit in terms of kind of some of the things we've talked about already, but what would you say would be your one tip to HR leaders to help them effectively implement their HR strategy?
That's a great question. I'll give one tip. I think it sort of combines a few bits, but the one thing, once you've formed your strategy and as a way to form your strategy in collaboration with other stakeholders, etc., is clearly communicating the story. So what is it you're trying to achieve? What's the compelling story around your strategy? And translating that in a way that means something to the business. And what I mean by that is not a load of HR L&D talk. It's translating in a way that's meaningful to different audiences that you're trying to engage. So whether that's an operational audience or whether that's a financial audience or whether that's the CEO, is having that compelling story really clearly. And I hate to say it, the elevator pitch. So if you meet the CEO in the lift, and he says, "Oh, what's this HR strategy we were trying to," you've got that quick, sharp, this is what we're trying to achieve, this is how we're going to do it, and this is the impact we're going to have. That's one thing. So I think, people are super clear on what you're trying to achieve, and they can translate that. I think then it's about, I think for HR teams, linking to that, if you're saying that this is important, this is what we're trying to achieve, as a team, you need to be role modeling that and demonstrating the behaviors you want to see in others and really living and breathing it. I liken it to the hairdresser with the bad hair. So the HR team, you don't want to be that hairdresser with the bad hair. What you want to be is role modeling everything that you expect of others. And I see so many teams not doing that. So when you're translating your strategy, they're looking at you going, well, you're not doing it, so why would we? So you have to get your house in order as well. Otherwise, why would people follow your lead?
No, I agree with you. And I've probably reiterated this on other episodes as well, but it's our product. It's our product as the HR function, what we're asking people to do as leaders or in terms of how they behave. And if we can't be advocates of the product, then...
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's simple, but I think if I went into any organization and said, what's the HR strategy? How many frontline people or frontline leaders would better go X, Y, Z? You'd struggle. So I think if you want to make inroads, you have to be really clear on what you're trying to achieve and deliver it in a language that is meaningful to something. So to people, not just corporate jargon and excuse my language, corporate bullshit. It's filling out the corporate bingo card. It's got to be tangible and meaningful to people so they understand it
and want to get involved.
And it excites people. This is it's a huge opportunity. So I think there's lots of other things HR teams need to do about implementing a strategy, but we haven't got probably time to talk about all of them. But hopefully
there'll be on more episodes. Don't worry.
That might be. There's two things, and they sound obvious. And the last thing I would say probably is knowing doing gap. People listening to this might know that those things need to happen, but are they doing it? And it's about closing that gap.
Absolutely, and we can help with that. Absolutely. And there are lots of people that can help with that, because the difference it makes to your organization, getting into a space where this is active in your organization rather than words on a page, is huge. So lovely. Sean, thank you so much. We will, of course, put the links to the book and all your contact details in the show notes. But why don't you tell us a little bit about where people can find you?
You can find us at, I always get this wrong, www.elev8.co.uk. And you can find me on LinkedIn. So Sean Spurgin, spelled the Irish way, SEAN. And you can find the book on Amazon. And we'll put it in the link afterwards. But yeah, if anyone wants to, we have an abundance mindset, so feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. We're often sharing ideas and thoughts. Sean
shares loads of really brilliant stuff. So obviously, we'd love you if you're developing leadership investment in some way. Talk to Sean, talk to me, talk to whoever brilliant suppliers there are out there. But to be honest, you could just go to Sean's LinkedIn. There's quite a lot of amazing stuff on there. Quite honestly,
and you do very well as well, and lots of other people out there, like you say. But I'm a big believer, sharing, because some organisations don't have the money to invest. So if you can help someone, then that's a good thing.
Definitely. And if you're listening to this and your organisation isn't investing in you, make sure you're following people who do share stuff and are there to help create your own philosophy and ideas and viewpoints and behaviours around leading, because it's on you as leaders to choose to do your role as well, isn't it? And not wait for your organisation to invest if they're not doing that.
100%. Love that.
Just do it. Do learning. Oh, right. I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Sean, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you for joining this episode of HR Strategy in the Hot Seats. Please leave us a review. Let us know what you think about this episode. What did you think about the topic? If you have any thoughts on topics, themes, questions, guests you'd like me to cover in future episodes, please do let me know. Get in touch with me via LinkedIn or drop me an email at anwen@purpleskyconsulting.co.uk. Hope that you could join us on the next episode and make sure you share this with any of your network too. Thank you.